why do we stop ourselves, right? Or why do we do the things we don't want to do that we think is expected of us? We don't live authentic to ourselves in those moments. Like the true purpose of a human's life is that self-awareness, the truth within us, but to love. That's it. Just to love on others. And if you can't be that for yourself, how are you possibly able to be that for anybody else? Because then it's a lie. And if you're living a lie, that is so exhausting.
Welcome to Scared Confident. I'm your host, Tiffany Souter. Excited for the conversation today. Renée Warren is an award-winning entrepreneur, investor, author, speaker, podcast host, and founder of We Wild Women, a PR agency that revolutionizes how female-led businesses shine in the media spotlight. Renée is not just a leader. She's a visionary, innovating how women can achieve unprecedented visibility and success. And outside of her job and the hustle of that, she enjoys time with her Irish twin sons, CrossFitting, drumming, and being her husband, Dan Martell's #1 cheerleader. Renée, welcome to Scared Confident.
Well, thank you. And I'll say most of the time I'm his #1 cheerleader. But when he makes me angry, I'm not his cheerleader.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we can talk about that a little bit because I want to dig into your two-career household because I know it is a lot going on. But I want to start with a question. If I were to read that bio to your 22-year-old self, if I were to call 22-year-old Renée and say, I want to share with you what it's going to sound like to be you, what would she have the hardest time believing had happened in your life?
I would say probably having kids and then getting married, because I thought I wanted both, but I definitely wanted both when I was much younger than 22 years old. And then when I turned in my 20s after I graduated from college, I realized I don't know that I want this. And if I do, it's definitely not now. I think the entrepreneur side of things has always been established for me, and probably starting a podcast, but that was also like way before podcasting would have existed. So those would be probably the most surprising things if I were to be 22 and all of a sudden fast forward to today. That would be 20 years ago.
Can I dig into that for a hot minute? Because I think that we, as women, feel like there's like these seasons to things. There's only so many years our bodies will have children. And so there's this odd time pressure. And I'm sure you also talk to young women where they see like these roads. At some point they have to intersect this like mom version of myself that I see and somewhat anchored probably in how we grew up and what we thought that was going to look like. And then we have this like career version of ourselves where you went to college, you worked really hard for this kind of achievement that you have. And it's like what I'm pursuing and what I want, like, how do we fit those things together? And it does feel like this traffic jam almost in like this season of your life. So I don't know, we don't need to spend 25 minutes on it, but how did you kind of unpack that for yourself a little bit?
Well, for me, it was, I had already, I want to say, accomplished a lot. So when I was 17 years old, my mom told me to get a job. And I thought that entrepreneurs just made a lot of money and didn't work a lot. So I couldn't figure out why people actually worked for somebody else. And my sister and I at the time decided to start a restaurant. So we took over the lease of a building and we started a restaurant. So she was 19 at the time, 20, and I was 17. And yeah, we made a lot of money, but we worked so hard. I remember one week it was like 80-hour week that I had worked. It was ridiculous. And I thought, okay, I don't mind this on some level because remember, 17 years old, there's no care in the world and you feel good and there's no worries. I lived at home, didn't have cell phones back then, had zero expenses. So we were rolling $15,000 worth of cash underneath our bed at night thinking this is normal. So I got a taste of what it was like to be an entrepreneur at a very young age and all of the issues that went with it, from hiring my mom's friends to having to fire people because they came to work stoned and having to be the person to make the decision to do the next thing in the business. But at the time, also in high school, there was like 9 of us growing up. We were really close. And every single one of them, other than myself, had a boy. They were always sad or crying or worried about where they were going, who they were with. And I'm like, you're so young. Why are you putting so much pressure on yourself to be in a relationship? I mean, I'm thankful that I didn't feel the need to have a boyfriend. Plus, small town, there wasn't really anybody that I liked. And so I don't think having a family and getting married was really instilled in me at that young age because I don't want that right now. But I have my whole life ahead of me to think about what this is. I was just kind of like free and just enjoying the time. So then I went to university and then I traveled and I lived in Australia for the year and I've had boyfriends. Coming back to Canada, it was like time to get real about my career. So I had my first and only corporate job for maybe 2 years. And it was very stifling. And even then, I'd say that group of people weren't really getting married or having kids yet either. I had a lot of friends. So I'll be 43 this summer, and there's no shame in sharing how old I am. I have friends in my circle of girls that I grew up with that only had their second child this past year. And so people waited a long time. None of us really grew up like super religious or anything, although some of us did attend church and did have our own communities. But because of that, there was no pressure. There was no pressure from my parents either. There was no expectation of me getting married, having kids. There was nothing until I met my husband. And I was 28 years old. And at the time, I was with somebody else who I just couldn't see myself having a future with, but we had fun together. And I was like, oh gosh. So dumped him. It was mutual. And then I met my husband. I was like, oh, this is what it actually feels like to see a future with somebody. And I was like, we can build this together. And boy, did we ever build our life together. So we've been together for, I think, like 14 or 15 years. And we both lived in separate cities while dating, same cities while dating, kind of from like San Francisco to the East Coast of Canada, now on the West Coast of Canada. I knew that when you find that right partner and you see a future together, with the admiration of each other and then the motivation to build something together, I knew that whatever was thrown at us, we could handle. And so, funny how our story went was he proposed to me just a year after we started dating. And it wasn't a few months later that I found out I was pregnant with my first son, Max. And so while we had already planned the wedding and we had already sent out invitations for people to hold the date, save the date for this date next summer, we were literally due on the same day as that wedding.
Oh my word.
Yep. So we had to call everybody up and say, oh gosh, this happened. So we postponed the wedding to the next summer. Same thing happened again because we expected our second child and who was due a month after our supposed wedding date. And he came early. So
Oh my
we had
word.
2 boys in 11 months. We had to postpone that wedding again. We finally did get married. And the blessing in it was that we had our 2 and only children in our wedding with us. And we absolutely loved that. But coming back to like how we do this is we've always applied our business like philosophies to our family life. So looking at what works in our business to be able to manage so many things, we knew we needed to do that in our business because my husband was raising around for his next startup. I was growing my previous agency. We had clients from all over the world. There were moments when we would, in passing, see each other in the airport. Somebody was coming, somebody was going. We'd wave through the security window. And it's like the nanny was at home with the kids. I held on to that hustle and I held on to that drive for a very long time to the point of burnout. And we could talk about that too.
There's actually a theme, I think, as you were telling me your story, that even connects to the work you're doing today, and like almost like this courage to stand apart actually from the pack. Even when you were saying like I had 9 friends and it was like, I mean, I don't know, I don't need a boyfriend. They can have that. Like sort of just courage to stand apart. And I think a lot of times people want uncommon outcomes in life, but they don't know how to put an uncommon effort into it. And it means sometimes being alone and taking a right when other people are taking a left and trusting your own timing of things and not feeling like you have to follow so closely what society's expectations are, what your family's whatever, wherever the expectations are coming from. They're usually well-intentioned, but having the courage to follow your own path is kind of what I hear in your story. And it's a little bit amazing that that's what your work is now, is helping women stand apart, like having the courage to do that. And it sounds like that's been a theme in your relationship and in just your life.
I'd say I'm like a contrarian. I think there are rules and boundaries to in our society that aren't illegal to not follow, but we feel like there is a duty as a collective, as a society, to follow certain rules and to abide by certain boundaries. But a lot of us don't ever question how we can approach something differently or do something differently or have a different belief, or we're too scared to speak up. We're too scared to do something that may go against our families or our community's beliefs for fear of rejection, for fear of being shamed. And I went through something really recently. I don't know if you want to talk about this on the show, but I'm really open about a recent surgery that I had done. Do you
Yeah,
know about
I know
this?
your nose, yeah?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So a month ago, almost to the day, I had rhinoplasty done. And this all relates to this everything we're just talking about, because even when you ask, why do I decide to work when we are financially really, really well? My husband's business just blew up like crazy in the last couple of years. So there's no financial reason why I would need to work. But this connects to the story perfectly, because to answer the why in that is also to know why I've been wanting to get, and like I'm still healing. Like my nose is still very, very puffy. When I look at the camera right now, like, oh my God, it's still swollen. I feel so good. The moment I woke up after surgery was like someone took the weight of an elephant off my shoulders. For 30 years, this is something I've been wanting to do. And the message is, I'm not saying go and get plastic surgery and do all these things, but that if there's something that you've been wanting to do for so long, and you're not doing it because the only thing you're worried about is what other people think, let me tell you, the outcome is so not what you expect. So, my husband, who has a media company, said, why don't we do a mini documentary of the whole process of you getting rhinoplasty? And I said, no way. I don't want people to think that I'm feeding into the patriarchy's ideals on perfectionism and how everyone needs to go and have plastic surgery in order to be pretty. That is not the message I want to send. That's because I worried about what other people thought about me getting this procedure. And so I told a few friends, and let me tell you, every single person that I told before going into this surgery were screaming out loud with excitement. They're like, Renee, you do you. This is amazing. And so I had not told my parents. I'm very close to my parents. And I had not told them up until 2 days before going into the surgery. And this was booked months ago. So I
So it
called
was a
them.
choice not to tell them.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, oh
Uh-huh.
God, these are the people that I'm so afraid of. I don't want them to be insulted. So I called them up, and usually they're together at home, but for some reason my dad was out, I don't know, at the gym or something. So my parents are like 78, 79 years old. And I called them up and I was like, Mom, we chatted, and I was like, hey, we talked about them coming to visit us in August this summer. And so I go, here's the reason for my call. And I just told her, and I expected some massive fallout. That she goes, how long is the recovery? Where are you getting this done? Is Dan bringing you? Okay. Oh, about those dates in August of us coming out to visit you. And I go, Mom, did you not hear what I just said? She's like, yeah, that's totally fine. And I was like, okay, can you just have Dad call me when he gets home, please?
Or can you just tell him? And yeah.
So I'm like, what? I'm like looking at the time of day. I'm like, she hasn't gotten into the wine yet. So she knows what I'm saying. Okay. So my dad calls an hour later. Same exact story. And then he hangs up, and then they call me back a little bit later. He's like, you and your mom, we were just chatting and we realized that we expected that you would do something like this a lot sooner. And I go, what? And so we don't talk about these things. Never once did I ever tell anybody in my life that I hated my nose because it was going to bring attention to it. Nope, can't say I don't like my nose because then people are going to be like, oh, geez, she's got a big nose. So I finally built up the courage. I think it was 4 or 5 days after the surgery to post something on Facebook. And I used Facebook as a good litmus test because it was more of a closed off community. Most of the people that I'm friends with on Facebook are people I've met in person or are people I've known. And I was like, here it goes. And I wrote the story about why I did this and why I've been thinking about this for 30 years. And what stopped me from doing it was everyone else's perceived opinion of why I shouldn't do this and how pretentious it was of me to do something like this. Not only did that not happen at all, zero. I had phone calls, text messages, DMs of all these people telling me how brave I was to share the story, admitting to all of the surgeries they've all had done, tummy tucks to earlobes to nose jobs to chin implants to butt stuff. I was like, Holy crap. I'm like, I did not know that literally everybody I knew had something done. And I go, "We don't talk about this because of the same reason why." They never shared the story, the same reason why I never did. I just happened to be the person to be maybe brave enough and okay enough to share it. And then I got so many compliments about my bravery. I got so many people who were inspired to do the thing that they were afraid to do, whether or not it was surgery or something else in their life. And so when I asked myself, why did I take so long to do this? Was because I was just so worried about what other people thought. And believe me, there are probably people that have thought that and they maybe said it amongst themselves. But guess what? I don't care. What I've learned in all of this is that if anybody were to look at that story and have something negative to say, it actually has nothing to do with me and everything to do with them. And like Rachel Hollis says, other people's opinion of you is none of your business. So here I am recovering from something I've been wanting to do for 30 years. And I stopped myself because I was too worried about the negative fallout that never, ever happened.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Renee. I think that you're like seeing the parallel in every area of our lives, like where we are afraid to run into the thing that we're called into, whether that be getting comfortable. My grandma has this amazing saying, and she says, like, dress to forget yourself. Or like,
Mm.
if you have a nose you love, that the way that makes you available to other people is in a totally different place because you're not thinking about yourself, getting it to the place where it's like, I'm totally happy with how I look, happy with how I feel. I feel good on the inside. And I look in a way where I can just be comfortable and I can be available to like serve and love and be present to other people. That's what I hear from you is this was about taking my attention actually away from myself more than it was this sort of big vanity motion, and like having the fear to like confidence to step out is
It is the
amazing.
confidence. And it's not to say that I did not already do the inner work. I did everything. Meditation, spirituality, hired coaches, therapist, to go beyond my looks to tap into the essence of me. But here's what I believe that happened in all of this is post-surgery is now I feel like myself more. There's nothing else I want to do to my body. Nothing. That was the one thing. And so that self-esteem and the confidence that comes the equivalent would be to the person losing their extra 20 pounds, right? Or the person getting their hair cut or dyed or whatever it is. It's like, why do we stop ourselves, right? Or why do we do the things we don't want to do that we think is expected of us? We don't live authentic to ourselves in those moments. Like the true purpose of a human's life is that self-awareness, the truth within us, but to love. Just that's it. So love on others. And if you can't be that for yourself, how are you possibly able to be that for anybody else? Because then it's a lie. And if you're living a lie, that is so exhausting. It
Mhm.
is not
Yeah,
fulfilling at all.
has different consequences, totally. So I want to take a little detour from this to like knowing who you are, having the confidence and kind of saying like, okay, I know myself and I've got to figure out how this plays into the world in all of the different roles that you play and as a wife and a mom and business pursuits that you have. And we talked before I pushed record. I was like, I really want to talk about you're still trying to do some really hard things and you don't have to. There's no financial pressure for you to make anything happen. And I know that you're not just like wanting these to be passive hobbies that just scratch an itch. Like I can tell that from the outside. So what keeps you like pushing so hard and keeping yourself in the growth game and continuing to just like push? Why make it so complex, Renee? Like why make life so hard? Like why?
But
Why?
I disagree in it being harder
Well,
because
I'm more asserting this. So help
yeah.
me.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe the expectation would be that I would not work and be a stay-at-home mom, and let me tell you, that is harder for me. I have tapped into that when we first got our oldest into school. We were adamant about homeschooling, which meant that he was at home with us for months, and then I just threw in the towel. I said, "I cannot do this." It was hard. The decision for me to do what I do is because I genuinely believe that we are all artists, and we all have our own vessel to which we get in the state of flow where we totally lose track of time doing what we do because we love doing it, whatever that is. And I'm not talking about painting canvas or making jewelry as artists, although those could be the things. I'm talking about hitting record on a podcast. That's for me it's artistry, or it's about crafting an incredible strategy and pitch for a client because I love doing that. And I feel like I would be living out of alignment if I was to coast. And I'm not disrespecting the people that are stay-at-home moms. My kids are older. I feel like there'd be way less for me to do. And we have a lot of help at home anyway. But I could not coast. I need to create. I need to be the artist that is expected of me from God. God's gift to us is that we are artists and that our service back to Him is to fulfill that in the best way possible. And so that's why. And I've tried it. And I've tried working in my husband's business for my husband. I've tried every single possible array of how we could live a life. And then we just decided this is what I'd love to do. That being said, I've never taken a mat leave. So when my kids were born, right away back to work. The moments they were both 5 weeks old, they were in daycare full time with my sister-in-law's daycare. And I was back to work. So we decided, actually not that long ago, that my husband and I, that I will take a mini sabbatical come this December. And what that looks like, I don't know. But we put it on the calendar that it's time away because I do know this too, that if you're not stepping away from the hustle of and grind of life, that you cannot be the creative version of yourself. Think about those moments when you have the best ideas in the shower, on a walk, on a run, is because there's really nothing else going on. And so if you want to kind of unlock that next level, if you want to get out of a rut or get unstuck, I highly recommend allowing yourself to be rested and even bored, because that boredom is what allows you to figure stuff out.
Are you intimidated by I feel like I would be intimidated by that prospect of not having tasks, of being bored. Is part of this decision a reaction to you saying, like, I do feel like I'm like in a creative desert right now, and I do feel like I need a different source of like inspiration? Is that how you guys got to this choice?
I mean, years and years of discussions. So one thing that we do is we do quarterly couples retreats, my husband and I. So we go away for 3, 4 days disconnected and we work through certain criteria. We also have weekly meetings. And it kept coming up. Then we do these 2 litmus tests. The first one is if you were to die in a year today, what would you do for the next 12 months? Right? But like, be honest, what would you do? Because whatever the first 2 or 3 things that come out of your mouth are your reality. And I think we don't give ourselves that respect or the space to actually think that way. And then the other litmus test is if $22 million was deposited into your bank account today, right now, you were free to do whatever you want with it, would you be doing what you do? And it's not to say to remove yourself from all your responsibilities in life, but really think about that and how can you make that work? Because a lot of us are stuck in relationships, in jobs, in positions that we know we don't need to be in. And we're too afraid to take the leap, make the change because that's tough. Change is tough. Change is not as hard as just living a life that is so inauthentic to yourself, though. So he kept giving me that test every week. If you were to die in a year from now, would you? I'm like, oh, yes and no. I feel like I need to think about this. And so my friend Allie Caffrey has a business where she helps people essentially learn how to take sabbaticals from their business. It's called the sabbatical method. And the reason why she teaches that is because every founder, CEO, business owner should create and structure a business so that if something were to happen, or even if they elected to go away for a couple weeks or a couple months, their business could survive. So finally called her up one day. I was like, I'm going to take the mat leave I never had, even though my kids are 10 and 11 years old. She goes, good for you. So that's why I'm doing it. At this point now, we just made the decision. So I don't know how long it's going to be. But I also know with full conviction that whatever comes of it is going to be what needs to happen.
I love that. So if you were going to die in a year, what would you do? Is that the question?
Yeah.
And then the second one is if a $22 million was deposited in your bank,
Would you still
Would
do
you
what
be-
you're doing today?
would you still do what you're doing?
And so the first question is really, we'll answer immediately. Who are you going to surround yourself with? 100% people are going to be like, I'll be with my kids more, my wife, my husband, my parents, my family. It always comes down to people. And the second one is really answers the question is what you're doing to create and generate wealth the thing that you really want to do? Because I mean, $22 million is it's a lot. You can do many things with that.
Yeah,
That's
right.
tax-free, by the way.
It's after
Yeah,
taxes.
after taxes. It's just
It's an
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's an S corp. It's yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can do whatever you want. Okay, so we don't know when we're gonna die, and most of us don't have $22 million in our bank account. But the exercise really motivates you to think, what can and should my life really look like? And to answer the first question, it always comes down to who you're going to surround yourself with the most, because every single person is like, well, I spend more time with my kids. We would go on this lavish vacation. If you can afford it financially and time wise, do it now. Call your mom and dad today. Book those things today. Why do we wait? Right? What stops us from doing the things that we want to do?
I think Why Do We Wait is the title of this episode.
I
I
love
mean, at
that.
the beginning, why do we wait?
I love that. That's totally it. Why do we wait?
Yeah.
Noah's job, $22 million.
Yeah, why do we wait? But I think it gets to the center of what, even in your own maybe like just journey right now. I've seen like on social, you took some liberties with like photo shoots to be like, I am going to physically show how big I want to live, like what I wear. And I think there's like this like break from routine that you're able to be like, no, I'm not going to stay inside of this pail. I'm not going to stay inside of this box. I'm not. And I'm physically going to practice wearing bright pink, making myself big, like, I'm physically going to practice that as a way to train my spirit. That's what I like read from you. Is that fair?
Yeah. So somebody said it best on Facebook. I think it was my friend Bonnie who came in and dropped a beautiful note, of which, if you remind me, I'll share it with you because it might be good for your show notes too, about how you're outside of what you wear, what you look like is really adorning your soul. It's how you dress your soul. And so if that nose didn't fit, how are you going to dress your soul? So for me, when I look back at those pictures, I've had the same photographer since 2020, and I've done 5 photo shoots with her. And it is impressive, the evolution of my confidence over those few years. And after each photo shoot, the colors got brighter and brighter, and I started to show a little more skin because that's what I wanted to do. My body was the same throughout those 4 years. And so I look back 4 years ago, those first photos, I was really covered up and like just not bold. And now I feel like I've gone through this radical reinvention, and I don't care. I do not care. I call it the give no F's 40s. When you turn 40 years old, drop all F's, just leave them at the door.
Yes, I hear you. Yes. Living in that decade is, I think, fun. I think my 40s have been
Oh,
my
yeah.
most fun.
Yeah. They've done a study, and I got to find the study because I always source it, but they studied thousands of women in their like 70s and 80s and asked them what year they recall feeling like they started to get older. And the average age was 43. And that's what I'm coming into this year. So yeah, I got to prove them all wrong.
I turned 44 in June. I'm 1 year ahead of you. So I don't know. I think you're as old as you want to be sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Sometimes my hip hurts a little after a run, some things like that.
Yeah,
that
the
didn't
knees
used
start to go a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
There's a little bit of that. A little bit of that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I have one more place I want to park us, and then we can close out here. But in the work that you do in helping female-led brands be found on the internet and get coverage inside of like big media outlets, there's obviously like press releases and pitches and outreach and journalists to make friends. There's all these X's and O's of it. But one of my observations as I read through the testimonials that I think connects to this theme of why do we wait is it was like, I felt like they were saying, Renée helped me believe that I was worthy, that the project I'm working on is worthy of it being seen and found and being beside these big media brands that we represent. So just talk a little bit about, I think as you put yourself out there as a thought leader in your We Wild Women podcast, it's like finding that internal well to keep yourself going and like believing that the world needs to hear this. What does that look like? What does that sound like, Renée? And like, if someone's in that space, how can you help them see themselves the way that you would see them if they were on the phone with you?
So I think the people that decide to come and work with me have already made the decision that they need that attention. But a lot of people wait. But when we start working together, really part of what they're seeking is that validation of themselves being the person that's going to establish themselves as the authority in the space, the people that set the standard for their industry. I'm not the person to give them validation. But for some
Mhm.
reason, it happens while we work together because I help them with their positioning and their messaging and their pitching and this overall strategy of how they can reach out. But really, when you're asking that question, the download I got was also the evolution of the industry. So PR has changed dramatically in the last 4 years. I want to say part pandemic, which is a huge thing, but also just that it was on the way out or up for a big change anyway. Big media companies laid off all their staff writers. It's just there was so much going on. But here's a reality. We are all our own media companies now. And I know this to be true that journalists will choose, or writers, reporters will choose a person that has a more extensive social following that might be a little bit less qualified because they need the eyeballs for their stories. We all have the power to be our own media companies. It's right in our hands on social. Few people actually invest their time and their dollars into growing that because the freedom you have to say what you want, to do what you want on social is crazy. I have had a client who is a professional dog trainer, and her approach to dog training is a little bit more strict than a lot of the media outlets want because they're all into like positive reinforcement. And she has a different approach to it. Not to say that she has any space for physically abusing a dog, but she has a different approach, which meant that a lot of the media won't interview her or have her on podcasts because her approach is not in alignment with their values in dog training. And she's not about punishment, but she's about a level of punishment to help correct behaviors. So, the solution to this problem is that you just blow up your TikTok and your Instagram account, that you're allowed to have full ownership of what you share and say, and nobody can tell you what the boundaries are. And that alone should get her the recognition. Because here's what I know is if you are putting yourself out there, putting yourself on podcasts, getting attention from people over social, like you and I connected on Instagram. I had a woman reach out to me 2 days ago asking me to speak at an event in Florida in September because she found me on social media. That's it. And it's not like I have a massive following, but I put out the right content consistently for people to get an idea of what I do and my values personally. That is a good test for the type of content that you should be sharing, but also a good test of content you could be pitching to the media. So when things start to hit in terms of engagement, likes, shares, follows, that is an indication of the content that your community needs. And that's the stuff that gets the attention of the media. So it used to be that you get in the media, then you get followers. Now it's almost the complete other way. When you have spent the time to build your presence online, YouTube, social, podcasting, it makes it so much easier for you to pitch the media. Because here's the thing, it's the only way where people can get daily active insight into your life. We're all a reality TV show. There's a reason why people are addicted to reality TV. We have that capability ourselves, is we're own our own reality TV show. People can tap in for free anytime they want. People buy from those they know, like, and trust. And that's the only way to do it on a day-to-day basis is to share stories or to throw up a TikTok or to throw up your vlog on YouTube. I will say that I have 273 or 272 episodes on my podcast, of which we started doing a mix of interview and solo episodes maybe a year ago. And partially because I was way too afraid to do solo episodes, thinking I needed the other person's intelligence to actually have people listen to me. Guess what happened? Guess what gets more engagement, gets more downloads, have as average longer consumption rate are all my solo episodes because I am telling people my personal story and they like that. And then strangers will be like, "Hey, Renee, I hope you had fun in Tokyo. I realized you're only there for 3 days." I'm like, "How do you know?" "Oh, that's right. They shared it." So I know there's a lot of people that don't agree with this move or this perspective, and that's okay. I will say it will be harder to get the attention of your community, your industry, the media, if you're not trying.
What's considered a lot of followers, like in your sort of Pareto of things.
It's the followers to engagement too, because there's people that have like 50,000 followers and they post something and they get 3 likes. But like 3 likes consistently means probably a lot of bots. So a lot of followers can be anything. There's micro influencers that have less than 5,000 followers, but anytime they post something, their community loves it. Then there's people that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers. And it's like the follower count is significant at a certain point, like also to know how old, like the age of your account. So if your account is 2 days old and you have 2 followers, well, that ain't going to get you anywhere. Sorry. But I would say like active, engage, a few thousand followers is a good base. It's meaningful. You're posting stuff daily, every single day. I actually have worked with a social media professional for a while now, Allie. She's helped me out through this too. It's not difficult. We always stop because we're like, what do we say? How do we say it? Just post something. And if it flops, don't do that again. It's that simple. And you might lose followers, but guess what? You're going to end up gaining more in the long term anyway. And don't try to be everything to everybody. Be super specific in the content you're sharing. If your account is about being a stay-at-home mom, then let it be the best stay-at-home mom account ever and own it with conviction. If it's about being a housewife, then be the best housewife that Instagram or TikTok could ever see. Whatever it is, whatever you are, whatever your values, just be that. And that's all like when it comes to building authority. You cannot be an authority in your industry without owning a super niche. You won't come to me because I make the best water bottles in the world. No. But you'd come to me for advice on building authority, on PR, on why you shouldn't wait.
That's right. Love it. I feel like this was like a little pump sesh for me as I'm just figuring out I've got this agency that's doing its thing. And as I'm starting this podcast content world, you can get in your own head and lose like that sharp tip into the marketplace. And it's like, just don't make it so freaking hard.
Yeah.
Just,
Oh,
yeah, I
example.
love that.
I know that really quick sidebar. My husband, for example, he published his book January of last year. So it's a year and a half ago. About a year ago, he launched his elite coaching program for businesses. Now, he had already run SaaS Academy, which is coaching for tech companies, so SaaS-based companies. And that's been, I don't know, 8 years now. So when he published this book, Buy Back Your Time, which was more like a broad business kind of focus, he attracted general business people from like Main Street to corporate America. And then he arbitrarily launched this coaching program on the back end of Instagram DMs, of which now he's making millions of dollars. So sitting in a room in a mastermind with all of these people that have been in this space for years, who have complex funnels, a million different offers, who are, the revenue is less than Dan's. The reality was we complicate things because we think the busy work is the ultimate way to success. Because how can something be so simple, right? We think it has to be, it's not. Just like losing weight, just like building muscle, it's not that it's difficult, it just takes time. And most people are not willing to invest that time.
Oh, so true. You're preaching to me right now. Okay, we're going to part with a gift from your family to my 2 career households. So families like yours and like mine, where it's like everybody's got something they're doing and there's kids in the mix and you're want to have an amazing marriage, you want to have an amazing life. What's a tip, something you guys do in your family, could be your marriage, home, or with your kids, that helps turn chaos to peace, that helps you guys move from reactive existence to proactive existence? What's something you guys do, Renée?
Starting the day. So Dan and I are up before the boys. And when they come down, they give us a snuggle every morning. And we never let go until they let go. It doesn't matter how busy our day is, we will not let go until they're ready. Sets the tone for the day. But also, one thing that we've learned too is when things start to spiral, with a disagreement with my husband, the instant fix is physical touch. We don't actually, as humans in society, we don't touch ourselves enough. It sounds like it's not perverted, but it could be a hug. For him, it's like holding his hand. The moment you physically touch with affection, not actually like hurting somebody, changes the dynamic. And it works for some kids, sometimes not. For one of my kids who tends to spiral, it's meeting him at his level, both tonality, physically being lower than he is. So if he's sitting on the couch spiraling, we get down on the floor and we listen. We don't try to correct. We don't try to fix or coach. We just listen. Sometimes we just need a vent. And then just really understanding our love language. when you can understand each other's love language, because everybody's different. And it, by the way, it changes over time too. When my husband and I first got together, it was like completely reversed. And then after kids, it changed. And he kept depositing into our marriage based on what my original love language is. And he's like, why are you getting so frustrated all the time? I thought this is what you wanted.
Interesting. I didn't know it could change.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah, now mine is acts of service and words of affirmation. Because number one used to be quality time. So he's clearing his calendar, putting all this quality, and I'm like, why are the dishes still on the counter? He's like, but we're spending time together, babe.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not
No.
working.
Yes.
So
Yes.
those are a few tips.
Love it, Renee. Well, I love when people share the real and the raw from the today and not just from the past, as you're talking about just your rhinoplasty and that. I just think it's so generous. So thank you for sharing that with me today. It's been awesome to get to know you a little bit more, and I appreciate all you're doing to inspire women in the world. Appreciate it a lot. If somebody wants to get connected with you, Renee, between now and December, what's the best way to do that?
I'll still be
Before
online.
sabbatical, before your autoresponder is on.
No, I will probably be online more on social, just taking my own advice. They can find me on Instagram, Renee_Warren. So RENEE_WARREN. Or my website if they're interested in what I do for fun, which is make a living, wewildwomen.com.
Perfect. And we'll provide links to that in show notes. Thank you, Renee, for being on. This was awesome. My takeaway from this conversation with Renee was these 4 words. Why do we wait? Why do we wait to start? Why do we wait to say I love you? Why do we wait to plan the trip? Why do we wait to start the workout? Why do we wait? And as we move towards living this life that is untethered from fear, and oftentimes that's untethered from other people's expectations for ourselves, why do we wait? So I don't know. I was really encouraged just continuing to step into life with a sense of urgency and to do it in the way that works for you. I recently was just thinking about this idea of priorities and expectations, and I started to realize sometimes to pursue your own priorities, you have to disappoint someone whose else's expectations and priorities for you don't align with what it is that you want for yourself. And I don't know, just encouragement to live with a sense of urgency, to live and make choices like this life is not forever, because it's not. So anyways, thanks for listening to this episode. I hope that has been encouraging to you to continue to run boldly into your talents, into who God has made you to be. Like Renee said, we were all born to be a creator of some kind. And so step fully into your version of art. Thanks for listening. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Scared Confident. Until next time, keep telling fear, you will not decide what happens in my life. I will.